Human Trafficking by Alina, Carmen, and Sabrina. What if we can stop girls and boys as young as 5 from being sold daily? Human trafficking is not only an international problem, but it's here in Canada. It's in our own backyard. What if we can change the stats of every 30-second another person being sold into slavery?
Types of human trafficking. Trafficking for forced labor. Victims of this widespread form of trafficking come primarily from developing countries. Men, women, and children are slaved into a variety of jobs, such as agriculture, fishers, and construction work, along with domestic servitude and other labor jobs. Trafficking in women for sexual exploitation. Women and children from developing countries and from vulnerable parts of society in developed countries are lured by promises of decent employment into leaving their homes and traveling to what they consider will be a better life, but they find themselves forced into sexual slavery and held in inhumane conditions and constant fear. Commercial sexual exploitation of children in tourism. The phenomenon is prompted by the growth of inexpensive air travel and the relative low risk of prohibition and prosecution in the destination for engaging in sexual relationships with minors. International human trafficking involves someone who is in the process of being trafficked, crosses an international border regardless of the victim's immigration status. The legalization or the illegalization of border crossing in this case is irrelevant. Domestic human trafficking is a phenomenon in which all stages of trafficking occur within Canada, regardless of the victim's legal status. Vulnerable economic challenge and social dislocated sectors of the Canadian population represent a potential pool of domestic trafficking victims.
Persons accused of human trafficking tend to be men. The majority of people accused of police-reported human trafficking between 2009 and 2014 were male. More specifically, police services identified 459 persons accused of human trafficking, 83% of whom were male. Persons accused of human trafficking were most commonly between the ages of 18 to 24 and 40%, and 25 to 34 and 36%. Traffickers. The majority of traffickers are male, Canadian citizens between the age of 19 and 32 years and are of various ethnicities or races. Adult females and individuals under the age of 18 years, especially those who are female, are increasingly becoming involved as human traffickers for sexual exploitation.
Female traffickers usually work with at least one male. This partnership is sometimes relation-based. Traffickers who are under the age of 18 years old commonly work in partnership with adults.
In approximately 50% of specific causes of domestic human traffickers in the sexual exploitation trafficking associated with street gangs, however, intelligence does not indicate that human trafficking is organized street gang activities. The proportion of traffickers who work alone and those who work with other individuals is almost equal. Traffickers work with friends, trusted associates, family members, boyfriends, girlfriends, or any female involved in the prostitution. Victims are females, Canadian citizens between the ages of 14 to 22 years, and typically Caucasian. Individuals are more susceptible to the traffickers when they need financial support or gain the desire for love and affection. Individuals under the age of 18 years old engage in dancing in the adult entertainment establishment or prostitution, are even more vulnerable in recruitment for traffickers by as well as control tactics. However, anyone can be a victim of human trafficking.
Canadian Women's Foundation. Of the 534 organizations that responded, 266 reported that they provided service and supports trafficked and sexually exploited women and girls. These 266 organizations were found in every province and territory except Nunavut, with the majority located in Ontario 24%, BC 21%, Quebec 50%, Alberta 12%, and Manitoba 9%. They served large cities, small cities, towns, and rural areas, including northern communities and those focused on research development. When these organizations were asked about the women and girls they had served in 2012, they collectively identified 1,929 trafficked women, 943 trafficked girls, 4,708 girls, 14,457 women who were sexually exploited. Exchanging sex or sexually acts for drugs, food, shelter, protection, and other necessities of life, primarily through street-level survival sex. These organizations reported that most girls had been first trafficked at the age 14, and the majority of trafficked and sexually exploited women were the age 18 to 25 years.
51% of trafficked girls were or had been involved with child welfare system. 50% of trafficked girls and 51% of trafficked women were indigenous. 17 of girls and 42 of trafficked women were of color. No More Ending Sex Trafficking in Canada reported the National Task Force on Sex Trafficking and Women and Girls in Canada commissioned by the Canadian Women Foundation in fall 2014. Many Canadians believe that sex trafficking is a strictly an international issue. In fact, most trafficking cases in Canada are domestic, and recent reports show that 63% of those in trafficking in Ontario were Canadian citizens, often described as a modern form of slavery. Trafficking is also the control of using threats or violence to exploit another in the financial gain.
Sex trafficking throughout Canada is a growing public issue. Homeless youth are among the most vulnerable to exploitation. However, unsuspecting girls are also ensnared online, in malls, and in schoolyards. The majority of sex trafficking victims in our country are young Canadian girls. The average age is estimated to be 17. Victims. Trafficking victims can come from any neighborhood. The ethnic and socio-economic backgrounds of the girls are varied. Research in Ontario has shown that 90% of victims are female, and that 42% were first trafficked before the age of 18. Major risk factors include mental health issues, body image issues, learning disabilities, social isolation, child abuse experience, and poverty. New immigrants, LGBTQ plus youth, and most particularly Aboriginal girls are overrepresented among victims. If there's a common theme among victims, it is that they are usually youth who struggle with low self-esteem, sex trafficking.
Covenant House Toronto, Canadians' largest homeless youth agency. How can we stop human trafficking? Education. The more knowledge one has about human trafficking, the better prepared and equipped one is to stop it. Recognize the sign. When you are able to recognize what a victim looks like, you can better help them. Report any suspicions. When you see any suspicious activity you believe may be related to human trafficking, make the phone call to 911. Raise awareness. Raise awareness with those you know, whether it is within your circle of friends, family, local churches, faith-based group, your work involvement, or even your local politicians or legislators. Take action. Become an advocate about human trafficking.
These next 4 posters will use social justice as an awareness of human trafficking.